I'm Helen Cahill, Director of the Youth Research Centre in the Graduate School of Education at the University of Melbourne, Australia. And I'm sharing with you a model that we've evolved to help us reconceptualise youth participation. Youth participation is held to be a really important marker of quality in projects involving young people. And there have been a lot of different frameworks evolved over time to help guide programmers who are designing for youth participation. One of the limitations we found with some of these models is that they tend to be quite linear or hierarchical, and they kind of rank different qualities of participation. We find it more helpful to understand participation as a very dynamic process, and one that, if we want to optimise it, requires a lot of critical thinking in the design phase, as well as in the management that we carry out. And so we've designed what we call the 7P model, which looks somewhat like a machine or an assemblage. And we've designed it this way to provide a set of thinking frames and to remind us of the constantly moving and dynamic nature of participation and how we need to be mindful of that at the design phase. We've put purpose at the centre of the image, and this is because the purpose should orient the project. However, a purpose can continue to evolve through the work in response both to the participants' contributions and to what the context offers. The domain of protection is a useful thinking frame, but it helps us think about more than ethics and consent. It helps us think about all of the ethical responsibilities we have, both within the group, such that they help to keep each other safe socially, as well as physically. We also use the lens of protection to help us think about all of the things that may affect young people in relation to their involvement in the project. Some people are more protected in society than others. Some people are more vulnerable to even move to and from participation opportunities. Some people are vulnerable to stigma and violence. We also use the lens of protection to have us think about what our project does in terms of its impact on the community. We weigh up the risks and the opportunities that may be created through the project. So this lens is not meant to be one through which we take a condescending attitude to young people, but it's an ethical thinking lens, and we invite them to be the co-creators of the safety within the project, as well as thinking this lens through as program organisers or funders, if we have that kind of role. We use the concept of positioning to help us think about who young people get to be in the project, which is rather larger than what they get to do. So the notion of positioning has us think about more than the roles that people perform. It's how they perform those roles in relation to each other and in relation to the context. Because it's a very different thing to be positioned as an advisor or as a leader, as a contributor or as a critic. However, within a robust participatory project, young people will move through multiple roles. Overall, though, we want them to be positioned as key contributors and as key benefactors from the project. The domain of perspective helps us to think about whose voices are included in the project. Are there some who remain voiceless, who are marginalised, who are not reached? Of particular concern are our main target communities reached by the project. The term perspectives can also have us think about more than reach, inclusion and diversity though. It also reminds us to think critically, so that once we have gathered people and we have formed a project and the project is evolving and doing its work, people remain alert to the impact of the project. They think critically about how diverse others may see what's going on. And they think critically about what it is that they've even designed to do in the first place. So it carries that notion of the work of critical thinking that we do through an ethical lens and through a creative lens to be very mindful about the fit between our intent and what ends up happening in the project. Power relations is one of the areas that we ask people to think critically about. In our understanding of power, we don't see power so much as a possession held by some and wielded over others, but power as something that exists in relations. It's a fluid thing. It happens in interchange. We use also the domain of power relations to have us think critically about the way power dynamics emerge within the group itself. Because just like any other place in society, some people can become dominant and others may, from the beginning, be marginalised or become marginalised or stigmatised through the processes of interaction. So the important thing is to keep a critical lens so that we can look carefully at the dynamic of power, how it's shared, how it's distributed, and most importantly, what processes are used to foster healthy relations within and around the project. Place is a simple word, but it stands for an important thing in this model. It reminds us of paying attention to the context within which the project takes place and being mindful of the realities of the time that's come before and the time that will come after the project. So every project will be influenced by what's happened previously in terms of the culture, the history, the world or the local events, what's happening in the surrounding economy, what's the politics of the day. So while we exist and we generate our projects to make a difference to the context within which we live, we must always be mindful of the constraints as well as the opportunities that are provided. And the really useful thing about being place-based in our perspective is it helps us heighten our sense of responsibility and accountability for the things that we're designing and the things that we're going to do together. We need to make sure there's a really good fit between our goal of maximising participation and the method through which we fulfil on that goal. If we use traditional didactic ways of designing our interactions together, we'll probably reproduce the kinds of hierarchies that we want to interrupt. But if we use collaborative, interactive and creative methods to bring people into dynamic and productive exchange, we're going to make participation a really joyous encounter, and we're going to be much more likely to find a way to ensure that people get to think together and contribute together. Overall, the assemblage or machine-like image can help also to remind us that everything is interconnected. A shift in what happens in one territory will influence what happens elsewhere. The machine-like image can also help us carry complexity in our mind. It can allow us to take the meta view and think about what the overall interaction between the moving parts is going to be and what it might produce. Because after all, participation is not a panacea. Participation is a process. It may do social good or it may do social harm. It's the way we think through and design and manage what happens that will help us to ensure that we reach our goal of doing social good when we provide youth participation at the heart of programs that are designed with and for young people.